It's a great pleasure to invite you all to this talk on quality learning. So we have with us Professor N.J. Rao from Department of Electronic System Engineering and Professor Rajan Gurkal from Center for Contemporary Studies, and they will be addressing you soon. On behalf of you all, I invite them to this gathering. So this is a new endeavor from Science Institute Malayalam Exhibition. We are trying to conduct more talks among students and also faculties addressing the students. So this is actually the second of the series. The first one was 1 or 2 months back, and it was purely among students. So we consider this as the second edition as an improvement. And we feel that the learning will happen only when we discuss it more among ourselves. So today's session, our professors will be addressing us, and we are planning for another session so that the students can discuss among themselves. And I hope that the second session will be more productive also, and we will be taking the inputs from these two professors, and then we will be debating it among us so that we all will be learning together. So we haven't fixed any panelists for the second session. So all of you who are attending here, I request few of you to volunteer for the second session and make that second session also a success. And we will be preparing a written transcript of today's session so that all the points will not be just heard and lost. We will have a written document. And I sincerely request all of you to give your mail IDs. We will be circulating a paper. And please give your mail IDs so that we can send you our version of the written transcript, and hopefully we can have a small debate online also regarding the written version also. So I now invite Professor N.J. Rao to address the audience.
Good evening to all of you. Mine will be a fairly short session to explain from my point of view what do you mean by good learning. Because all our purpose is that any teacher's goal is to facilitate his students to learn well. Okay? But first of all, we require to know what is meant by learning well. The problem with education is the large number of problems are there. First thing is, everyone has an opinion. Anywhere, if you are above 13, 14 years, you know how exactly the education should be conducted across the country. And no two opinions agree with each other. So that is the first problem with respect to education. That means what it communicates is, when there are so many opinions, the problem is very complex. Each one of us are experiencing a tiny element of the entire education process or entire education, what you consider as that whole element. And we experience in our own way through our schools or our colleges, through our subjects and in a particular context, and then form an opinion, and then we generalize that. Whereas we don't do that with respect to our technical discipline. We are very careful when to generalize, when not to generalize with respect to our disciplines. But generally outside our discipline, we have no hesitation in generalizing even tiniest experience that we have. Generally that gets reflected in when you express your opinion after reading a newspaper item, right? We always have a solution for the entire world, just based on tiny bit of that. So that is the first problem. And while teaching and learning has been going on for centuries and thousands of years, we do have an operational experience, but some activities are done. In that process, some people are learning something, sometimes they are not learning. But we strictly do not know how the learning takes place between the ears. That is where the brain is, and that is where all the learning takes place. We don't have a very clear idea how exactly the learning takes place. There are so many schools of psychology have proposed so many theories. We are not going to get into those theories. Only in the recent past, a little more is getting known about how the brain works. A few conclusions can be drawn, but we are very, very far from knowing how the learning takes place from neuroscience perspective. We only have a black box approach like behaviorism, or a little a grey box approach like cognitivism, and a little social approach like constructivism, and so on. We have limited views of the entire we know very limited how the learning takes place. And there is one perception that is continuously, in spite of repeatedly proving it is incorrect, we faculty, possibly because it is in our interest, we keep on propagating. If you are a good researcher, you are automatically a good teacher. There is not a single iota of evidence for that. So many studies have been done throughout the world and repeatedly established these two are not necessarily correlated. It doesn't mean that a good researcher cannot be a good teacher, no. But automatically, that means essentially if you take that position that a good researcher is automatically a good teacher, you are reducing the role of teaching and learning. It's a trivial job. After all, you are a great researcher, and teaching and learning is a kind of a trivial extension of that anyone can do. So, but people still continuously, assiduously communicate this all the time. And then there are too many stakeholders in the education, and each one is looking for a very short-term outcome. That's one of the things that come. For example, as a student, if you join a master's program, you are looking for a placement at the end of the 2-year program. Or if you are in high school, you are looking for getting selected through CET kind of thing into some engineering college or some medical college. This is at the student level. And at the college level, you have administrative stakes are different, management stakes are different, faculty stakes are different, government stakes are different. All of them do not coincide. What has been happening right now, if you talk about in newspaper, it has to be written this year's pass percentages are better than last year's pass percentage. The state government wants that. So the administrators direct schools to make sure that the percentage is improved. And it goes to the extent, in fact, only yesterday I was sharing with somebody, the teacher says, how do you make sure? In the examination hall, they write the answers to the questions on the board. So all students can copy down the answers. And only for copying the answers from the blackboard, you get your marks above or below or whatever. So what happens when this, I'm not going to list all the gory stories of that, but the short-term gains, every place is a major cause. And you cannot make it coincide. Students' interests and faculty interests cannot be, somehow they do not coincide. And because of that, you don't have the right. It has been established repeatedly. If we have best faculty in terms of their research abilities, best students selected, and best facilities, learning still need not take place. Because even in such a situation like MIT, Harvard, people can get into some unwritten agreements between them, which says, okay, don't stress me. The teacher will not say in that many words, don't stress me, you give me good feedback, you will get a good grade. Okay, so there is a grade inflation, as it is called, is also a problem throughout the world. It is just not in India. And we have an extra problem in India. No decision is based on data. No, first of all, data is not collected at all. Is not encouraged. Everybody has an opinion. So senior most or the loudest in the committee will say this is what it is, and the decision at national level will get taken on that. If minister says, oh, the number of PhDs produced from the country are not good enough, and I must increase it by next year, it should go up by 100%. That is an official decision. It is communicated to everybody. So our decisions in India get taken without, first of all, data is not allowed to be collected. Is not collected. There are no projects where at a national place you can get the data for anything. And most of the decisions are highly political or authoritative. Somebody senior says it is sufficiently powerful academically, he says whatever it is, that is right. finished. The others have no chance of communicating anything. Now, the three statements that I am trying to make here. When do students learn better? First thing is, they are provided information about the goals of, let's say we are talking about a single course. That is how you interact with the teachers. In the beginning, the teacher will have to communicate what the student should be able to do at the end of the course. And most of the times we don't. We don't communicate that. We vaguely talk about the list of topics, or we say this is a textbook, these are the chapters that we are addressing, or even if some statements are written, it is what do you know about it? You must know, you must be familiar with this kind of statements. Clear goals are not stated. And there is an interesting experiment done in one of the American universities. They also have a problem of reservations. Okay, the students coming from Hispanic groups or blacks, they do not do well in so-called what you call hard courses. That means while they enter the college, they are mentally prepared, they are going to fail in course on calories. And it's a national problem for in US universities. So one college did an experiment. They did not change the syllabus. They divided the class into two parts. They did not change the syllabus. And same teacher gave, same exam was given, except for one group. They have communicated in great detail. These are the types of problems you are expected to solve. And this is the way we have to solve. Only sample problems were given. That means students were communicated exactly what is it that they should learn. And at the end, when the same exam is conducted, there's something like compared to this, there is a 2-letter grade difference between one group and the other. It is such a trivial thing to communicate what exactly the student should know. We don't seem to be communicating. On the average, we are not communicating. And how does the student find out what is it that he should learn? When the teacher doesn't communicate precisely, the only place where he goes is, what are the tests that he has given last year? And what is the final exam that he has given? That knowledge always comes from senior students. That means why should that be bypassed when teacher can communicate what he wants, but the students have to get that knowledge from the other. That means your thing is decided by previous exams. And if you compare between a good course and a bad course, it is never based on the syllabus, never based on the topics or the textbook that you use. You can just compare the two final exam papers from two courses and find out. If you take any IIT course paper, take any paper from any of the colleges, tier 2 colleges from a university, affiliated college, there is absolutely no difference in the syllabus. Same textbooks are used. But if you compare the papers, it will be very clear where the good quality of education is. Okay, it's easy to find out. So what happens, the next one is, once you communicate what exactly the student should know, and then your assessment. Assessment here, it could mean your projects or your whatever you want, the class tests, projects, or final exam. There should be alignment with that. Alignment with what you expect the student to know. You may have very laudable goals. You must be able to solve, create, or do all kinds of things. And then you give questions related to, let's say, define this, write short note on. The greatest contribution from India to the world of education is write short note on. Throughout the world. That's the only one that happens. There is no exception to that. All papers will have write short note on. Any damn thing can be written under that. A few words, keywords, if you write, the examiner is forced to give some marks. So what happens is assessment is never in alignment with your objectives. Then obviously good learning cannot take place. Why should student learn anything other than writing short note on? When you are officially asking that and giving marks for it, and say you are a good student if you get 60, 70%, 80%, what is the motivation for student to learn any other way? So assessment really drives learning. Please, but this officially faculty do not seem to be accepting it. How many times you would have heard in the class, you should focus on the exam, you should focus on learning. I'm sure all of you would have heard in your class And, and what is learning and what is examination? Why should these two be different? Why should good learning be different from good examination? If you create that dichotomy, students will never learn properly. And then obviously, when they are actively engaged in and also challenged at the right level. If the challenge is too high, you give up in the beginning. If the challenge is too low, then you say, what is there to learn? Okay, the art in good teaching and learning is the challenge has to be identified at the right level. I will use this diagram to identify all the factors that are involved. Quickly, I will go through that. I will not spend too much time. So the output of, as a consequence of the learning, the student should be able to do something which he was not able to do before the course, right? Otherwise, why is the course at all? So what he should be able to do, I call it a competence. I can use any other word like course outcome, learning outcome, anything. So the output is the competency. Now, if the grades, marks, represent my competency. If I get better grade or better marks, then I got a better competency. But that is valid, provided your assessment is properly done. If I give trivial questions, grades do not represent any competency that I have. So assessment should be the right one. Similarly, the evaluation also should be right one. I cannot give free marks, nor can I afford to be very difficult. So if assessment is in alignment, that is if I give it 1, on a normal scale of 1, and evaluation is 1, then then grades will represent the competence. And here in our case, most of the time assessment is pretty bad. And also in affiliated colleges, the evaluation is pretty poor because you are doing it on a mass scale. The dynamics of conducting and evaluating the performance of the students over thousands and thousands and lakhs of students, it has its own dynamics. And what happens is that an evaluator will be required to correct 100 papers a day. And if each student writes something different, then you have to read that, right? So if you write anything other than standard answer, he will not be able to give you marks. So the very dynamics of evaluation is forcing everybody to produce standard answers. Standard answers which are possibly provided by some guidebook or whatever it is. And now you developed a system of evaluation that prevents you. That means it punishes you if you learn by yourself anything. And people have to come out of that. For somebody to be good, you have to still survive the system and come out. And then here, the marks are dependent on the teaching. If teacher is good, it has influence. And also the competency in the prerequisite subjects. These two will decide. And also it depends on the effort that you put in. Okay, how does the effort come? Effort is the motivation. I may be intelligent, I may not be interested in that subject. I am not willing to put the effort. Okay, and then right level of challenge if I feel, then the effort will be right. And this effort is also a function of the teacher. If I don't like the teacher, I won't put the effort. Okay. And the grades obviously will depend on these 3 factors. Teaching is a function of all these factors. Like, obviously the teacher should be knowledgeable in his subject, and we should have student-teacher interaction the right way. This is where there is a wide variation among the faculty, from extreme 10% to 100% you can see. And then course management, which generally happens everywhere. There is taking the classes on time and then conducting the tests and things like that. And then this is one part that is not followed strictly. For us, course design is nothing but identifying the chapters in a book. That's over. My course design is over. But you can actually overcome many of the limitations here if you do a good course design. I will not now elaborate on course design right now. Okay. A bit of a theory. What is good learning? Learning consists of creating connections among neurons that depend that depends on anatomy and chemistry of the brain. That much we know. How exactly it happens, we do not know it completely. Then, processing sensory information is an integrated activity. You cannot isolate. That is, when some information comes to you, like the way I am speaking, you are either rejecting or accepting based on your previous, your biases, your model of the world. Okay, not only that, you are liking or disliking. So the brain, the way it is connected and it is designed or it works, you don't have any choice on that. All the three dimensions, what we call cognitive dimension, the affective dimension, because with every piece of information there is an emotion associated with it. Whether you like it or not, it goes there, is associated with that. And then there is psychomotor domain. At some levels, every course we are not talking about physical hand movements and all that, but even speech is a part of the psychomotor domain. So what happens when you have something like this, you need some kind of a taxonomy to understand learning. Though it is integrated, though experiences are integrated, how do you approach a complex problem? I have to create some structure on that. I have to impose some structure on that. So we require a taxonomy of learning that recognizes these three domains. There are so many taxonomies that were proposed in the literature, and the one that is currently popular, which is accepted in North America and in India also, whatever that is taught, is what you call Bloom's taxonomy. It was proposed in 1956, not now. It underwent minor changes over the period of time, all these 65 years. It underwent some changes, but it still stays, in spite of heavy criticism of that. Still, it is considered valid, and it seems to have some correspondence with the structure of the brain. That's what recent researchers were able to say, establish some kind of correspondence. And in higher education, we predominantly only focus on the cognitive domain. The other two domains are practically excluded, or sometimes even scoffed. I can share one thing with you, that for example, language, the expression is also a big part of psychomotor domain as well. I'm sure many of you research students who, faculty, at least in faculty meeting, I've been here from 72 onwards. Okay? In the meetings, they always complain the students don't write their thesis very well. It requires a lot of correction. Repeatedly, every year it comes. And in spite of that, we were not able to even convince there should be one compulsory course on English at the beginning of the research program. A credited course should be there. No, nobody is willing to give credits for that. This is a non-credit course. Try teaching a non-credit course, a teacher, that's a hell actually. Because why should the students go through anything? They won't listen to you, anything that you say. It is of no interest. But till now, in all these 40 years, odd years, nobody is able to persuade the faculty to accept. That means officially it is not considered part of learning. It has to be acquired outside. Yes, you should be able to express yourself, but not with my credits. So when you yourself think that it is not important, how will people learn? So we do not have respect for other than the cognitive. And this is also true at school level now. Courtesy these competitive exams, they make sure that there is nothing like cognitive, other than cognitive in their learning. In fact, they make sure everything is absent. The other two domains are absent. So now what happens is we wait for a chance occurrence of some good teacher happening. Some teachers, yes, there are always good teachers from whom you get inspired, but now you are waiting for occasions to occur, but they are not made because they are not allowed to be trained with that. Okay? So here, there are extreme examples of integrated experiences. Okay, you can't have, that's what I felt is you can't get anything better than this, that all dimensions, cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains are very, very dominant. All of them equally. take anything, you interpret what he's doing. This is obviously the cognitive part, right? He must know his music, and he's extremely skilled, and he's enjoying it. Same thing with respect to any other, like another instance of extreme integration of all the three domains. A little bit dominantly cognitive, okay, that with which we all can associate ourselves with that. And then dominantly affective, okay, and then dominantly psychomotor. But mind you, there is nothing like exclusively psychomotor. With any activity, all the three elements are present, but to varying degrees. A dumb person cannot play badminton like that, right? So there is a cognitive element in that, but at that particular point, the dominant area is the psychomotor. Okay? And sometimes in the same experience, you have graded domains. You have traversed across the domains. That's what it is. You have a 90-minute exam, you start with cognitive level and then go towards the end, you are pulling your hair. If he doesn't have hair, so he is showing it the other way. So an experience can go through all the three domains from dominant. Okay, I will not go through all this. This is what do you call, the learning has all these domains: cognitive domain, affective domain, psychomotor domain, and you can also address spiritual domain. We acknowledge its importance, but I don't know how to handle it. With the first sentence, you can get into controversy. So we are not going to touch that. So here, this is the dominant part that we have been doing. And while people acknowledge the importance of affective domain, once you enter it is a quagmire. You don't know how to get out of that. Everything seems to be important. You come with hundreds and thousands of variables. You don't know how to handle that. So still people are struggling to give a shape. How do you handle the cognitive, the affective domain in a systematic manner? Last 40 years people have been working on it. It's not that it's anything recent, but we don't have a very clear way of what I call is a 1,000 feet high view you can have. Its importance, and these are the important issues. But when it comes to ground level, what exactly do I teach in the class? What kind of question do I ask the student to know that he is learning in the affective domain? We do not have the answers. So I will just only look at the cognitive domain. Cognitive domain means what cognitive activity are you performing? Are you solving a problem? Are you analyzing a problem? Are you creating something? These are the types of cognitive activities. But activities, all right, there is always a knowledge element associated with it. So the cognitive domain has processes and has knowledge categories. There are 4 general knowledge categories, which is fairly simple to understand. We call it factual knowledge, conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, and metacognitive knowledge. Metacognitive knowledge is knowledge about your own cognition. Like the typical example is, I can just need 2 days before the exams to prepare for it, to do well in the exam. That is a very poor metacognitive knowledge. Okay? So that's what metacognitive is. So teacher's role is to find out through some interaction with the student whether he has the right idea. With respect to science subjects, that is adequate. But I cannot ignore, if I look at engineering from a science perspective, I lose a lot of engineering. Though many engineering faculty don't believe that. But if you want to do exactly look at engineering as a science alone, then you lose a lot about that. There is some work done on that. What categories of knowledge are specific to engineering? So there is one Professor Vincenti has provided that. These are the other 4 categories. Take one in that. Namely, how many of you are engineers here? Okay, reasonable number. There is no engineering activity where there are no specifications. You don't do anything without somebody giving you, whether you yourself setting up some requirements, right? You call it requirement specifications or criteria and specifications, and that is not part of engineering education anywhere. Because it is purged out of engineering, and engineering subjects are converted into pure science subjects. And that is what we try to restore, at least at DESC and CPDF. Okay? And these are the four. Let me not talk about the other one. But what I am trying to present is, if you use a structure like this, it will provide you to now talk in terms of quality. For example, if you take this these six cognitive processes, they are hierarchically arranged. Create is the highest, and then evaluate is next, and last one is remember. And in most of the affiliated colleges, all the questions, 90% of the questions belong to this. Now I can define, if you say you are learning well, or learning meaningfully, then that means I am trying to focus at these higher levels. I need not be very vague about what is meant by good learning. That means if I am addressing higher cognitive levels, and I design my activities, classroom activities, and also my assessment with respect to these higher cognitive levels, then I am facilitating good learning. That's what I presented this taxonomy precisely to say that we have a way of doing it. Sometimes when a teacher sets the paper, he is not necessarily paying attention to whether I am giving adequate distribution of my marks under various relevant cognitive categories. But if you do it according to a plan, then it is possible to restore regularly, systematically, in a repeated fashion, that you can do so. Okay? This is what is. You take any exam paper anywhere, give it to me, and in 5 minutes I will tell you whether it is a good quality paper or not. Essentially, tag each question with the corresponding cognitive level. That's all. So these are the domains that I have already mentioned. These are the 6 cognitive levels. And here is another word that keeps intruding. Even today it's dominant. We call it critical thinking. But critical thinking is a word not used by Bloom's taxonomy. Then is it outside this? Actually, if you look at the literature on critical thinking, it is nothing but art of analyzing and evaluating thinking, which means they are subsumed under Bloom's taxonomy. It need not be looked at differently. If I address my 6 Bloom levels, then I am also addressing critical thinking. Similarly, problem solving. And the literature on problem solving is very, very wide. But effectively, if you say problem solving involves apply, analyze, evaluate, and create processes. If I am addressing all the 6 cognitive levels, then I am also addressing problem solving approach. It is not outside these 6 cognitive processes. Okay, let me, I will skip this. Now, when is the assessment? Any assessment, we call it, it should be quality assessment. Now we talk about quality teaching, now we talk about quality assessment. When there are 2 properties it has to satisfy. Namely, it should be valid. That means I am measuring what I intend to measure. I say something but measure something else. So I need to establish that correspondence. Reliable means 60% marks obtained in this year in my course is equivalent to 60% marks obtained next year with another batch of students. But if there is no correspondence between the two, then it is not reliable. Simple definitions. Okay? For example, GRE exam, like we look at score is valid for 5 years or 3 years. 3 years. So for some time it was also valid for 5 years. But our gate scores, until recently they were valid only for 1 year. That means even the persons who have set the gate score, they are not confident that one paper is equivalent, 60% in one is equivalent to 60% next time. So it is valid only for a limited period, 1 year. Now we think it's 2 years, right? Okay. So they have slightly more confidence. That means they are trying to make it reliable. Okay, how it is achieved, we just given a process for that. I just wanted to mention about that. Now coming to the third part, it should be, instruction should be E3. E3 means there are 3 E's. It should be effective. That means whatever goals you have set up, you should be able to achieve those goals, or at least direct students towards achieving those goals. That people will agree. Then the other one, it should be efficient. This is not what everyone will agree, because you have all kinds of very fancy and fancy methods of instruction, like we call it discovery learning, you call problem-based learning. You have several of them. They're all wonderful when you look them in isolation, but when you try to fit them in a one-semester course, they are inefficient. Most of the fancy instructional methods, they are inefficient. I can do for one topic, but I have to address several topics. I don't have that much time in my course. So whatever methodology that you want to adopt, it should be efficient. And then obviously it should be engaging. When the student is not engaged in the activity, it's not going to be good instruction. Okay? So I will only leave it at that. I will not go further into detail. Actually, based on this E3, we are trying to, after a lot of experimentation with thousands of faculty, we developed a kind of a 3-day workshop on good learning for teachers, which we have been doing it across the country. So let me stop here for any questions or comments. I don't know what is the dynamics of it. How do you know?
If anyone has any questions, please.
Yes, please.
I just feel that won't there be one more factor that affects how learning goes, which would be some sort of an incentive that the student expects after a particular course is done. Like, because our society is so unequal in having, arts are given as second preference over sciences and all that. So a student who goes to an art school and a student who goes to a science school, whether they like what they're doing and they might be disturbed by the incentive system that is there after they finish it. Wouldn't this also affect how learning goes through the course?
I don't know if you are truly interested in a particular art course. You kind of postpone the decision about incentive, but incentive is not an academic issue. It's a kind of policy issue. If government wants to, let us say, encourage people to graduate from certain disciplines, they may create certain paths and provide some scholarships. That's how the government generally addresses these issues. If you have there are no history students, and you still require history teachers, then they will create some kind of incentive by saying that I will give some scholarship for them. Incentive will work only up to a point, but it is outside the teaching and learning process. Anything else, please?
The chart which you were presenting.
Yes.
Another one, the process of education evaluation and marks.
Which one? First. I have no chart. Yeah, sorry.
Assessment, elaborate about assessment, how it works out in effort and
See, if I write beautifully in course design what my objectives of the course are, you should be able to design this, you should be able to analyze such and such a thing, I write that. And the assessment, which is also part of course design, if it is not in alignment with that, these marks that you get have no meaning. If the purpose of my course is to make the student, let me say I come from electronics area, the student should be able to design some power electronic circuit. Okay? If my question paper doesn't contain any questions related to design of power electronic circuits, then it is in discordance. That's what we mean by that. The way I do is I create what is called an assessment pattern, which I communicate to the students. I will give this much weightage to this cognitive process, this much weightage to this cognitive process, and I try to make sure that my question paper follows that. Then I have alignment. That's what we mean by assessment laying the groundwork.
The background of the students is very wide, in a different background. How we can make a very effective assessment?
Here, there is a mistaken understanding. That is, when we say your questions, let me. Okay. We complain that most of the questions are here, okay, in a question paper, and then a small number of questions here. You almost have 80-20 kind of thing. Occasionally it comes. See, there is some questions do look like they belong to certain category, but what happens when any question is predictable? Okay, you have reduced it to the remembering. I can give a beautiful design question, but the question is already known to me that is going to be asked. Then there is no create process at all. I have reduced it to remember category. Now when we propose this, that you must shift some questions at least to the higher categories, most of the faculty say my students are not capable of doing that. In IISc you will get good students, but not in my college. That is the standard answer. And in my opinion, that is doing a disservice to the students. If you deny them learning anything here, you have permanently disabled them in the life for life. Okay, what can be adjusted is not compromise on the relevant cognitive levels, but there is another dimension you can add, difficulty. The questions that I give here in any of them can be less difficult. There is a difficulty index also that can be associated. Generally what happens when you show any question to any faculty member, he will say immediately, this is difficulty level 1, this is difficulty level 2, 3. People seem to be able to easily grade, make them. So make the difficulty level 1, but don't compromise on, don't give up the cognitive levels. That is no excuse at all. That the students come with a poor background is no excuse at all. Yes, ma'am.
Since you have joined this Washington Accord, our country, is it important that students from ordinary engineering colleges should have all these capabilities, and not only from students from IITs or IISc, because our degrees will be also
Don't generalize with IITs either. If you look at all papers are not uniform in IITs also.
Yeah, if you
But you are likely to find more better papers in IITs or IISc.
Since we have joined the Washington
Yes.
Accord, I think it should be on par with IITs or other
Yes.
engineering college.
Yes.
But how are we going to address this? Because our ordinary engineering college students will not have these higher capabilities. Because they are
But
not trained.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But what happens is nobody told them that it is necessary.
But how are they going to accept our degrees? Because we have joined the Washington Accord.
Even without joining the Washington Accord, our BE degree holders are accepted in American universities.
But not.
If they did not, if they say you had to properly accredited, the Indian history would have been different. I wish 50 years ago they did not accept Indian students into the program, saying that your programs are not accredited. by any agency because they did not be felt free. Now NBA is the earlier NBA accreditation process was not properly addressing this. Now the new NBA process is addressing this. You have to clearly state. They don't use the word Bloom's taxonomy, but they say pay attention to higher cognitive traits. Now, see, you can't make the whole country go from one point to the other in 2 to 3 years. It will take a lot of time. Earlier, if a faculty member talked about it, said that is all nonsense, that is your opinion, it has no relevance. But at least now, a good faculty member has justification. NBA asks for it. At least that much we have been able to create in India. It's a long way, long process. Yes, please.
In this taxonomy is understand term, is it not common to all in the sense without understanding we cannot analyze or apply or remember?
See, the word understand has a specific technical meaning here. The problem with the education field is also another one. There is no standardization of terminology. So, same person will use different words to mean the same thing and same word to mean different things at different instances. That is a problem of education. So, understand, knowledge, these are the words that we use in day-to-day language. But here, there is a very specific meaning given to that. Within that, yes. One of the processes I understand is you must be able to compare two things. You must be able to give an example of something. Okay, you must be able to infer something. You must be able to summarize something. If you are doing this kind of activities, then we call it understanding. Within Bloom's taxonomy, it is well defined, very clearly defined.
Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much.
I invite Professor Rajan to address.